Hello, Barb. Hello, Mark. How are you guys?
Doing well.
Awesome. Good to have you here. Good, good. All right. So we are talking about one-on-one engagement here. I'm going to let y'all take it away. I want to set this up real quick and say Mark is a pro and an expert at digital one-on-one engagement, particularly around tools like Facebook. And Barbara O'Reilly, Barbo, one of my best friends here in the industry, she is a pro on one-on-one engagement and just thinking through like building those ultimate long-term relationships with your donors. Jay, I know you're really good at that stuff too, so I'm excited for you all to banter and to talk about how to be effective right now with one-on-one engagement.
Great. And I don't know if you noticed this, Taylor, but this is the fire hose of love. It's right here. So I figured this session is definitely a firehouse of love, so I needed to get that little graphic from Etsy up.
Love it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I didn't need to create a logo for this conference. Now I'm just going to go swap it out with that thing.
My head fits right in the O. That's the last allusion to that. So you guys, thank you for taking some time to talk. This is the penultimate session, if that's the right word. And so all the pressure is on you to give us your usual brilliance. You got an introduction from Taylor right now. And maybe just another thing is a nice shout out that Barbara is the founder and principal of Windmill Hill Consulting and also a neighbor, among other things. Yep. Plus the past president of AFP here in the DC area, which I think is the largest chapter in the country.
Current president, yeah.
Current president. Oh, wow. You've been retired right now, live. Here's the news. No.
Oh, wait, what have you heard?
Well, it's when I'm attending all these meetings with all these people, I just hear these things, yes.
Yeah, current president, yeah. Largest U.S. chapter, no worries.
Yes. And Mark, of course, is sales director at Good United, and big background in this field. And speaking of backgrounds, I have no idea what the background is. Do you mind telling me what that is?
Yeah, so, excuse me. I had mentioned to everyone that on LinkedIn, my picture that Taylor used was very modern in 2020. I've had the opportunity to grow a mustache that my wife hates, and I have not had a haircut in 2 months. And so I thought, in the spirit of looking like I stepped off a Burt Reynolds movie set, I would take the call from home in what my home should look like with this mustache.
What it should look like. All right. Well,
yeah. It's amazing. Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Classy, Mark. Stay classy.
I have some 1970s background music to go with it as well, but I didn't want to interrupt the flow, so be prepared for that at any moment.
Wow. I'm a little scared. I mean, is this more like channeling Burt Reynolds, or it could be a million things. I guess we'll stop right there. Yeah, it's sort of like whenever I think about music for an intro for you, Barbara, I'm always thinking about Baba O'Reilly. So that's a Hulu illusion. Anyway, so what are we talking about here? Obviously,
Jay, somehow we can't see you. I only see your background.
You do? That's look.
There you go. You're back. I think it was the way you're sitting.
You've got the invisibility cloak.
Like, you disappeared. Yeah, like a Harry Potter character.
All right. Exactly. Yeah, sorry about that. No, I do exist. As we get into this last little piece, it's a perfect segue from the last session. We were talking about, of course, digital and real life. We've got two people who practice that world, and particularly retaining donors via one-to-one, whether that's the world of major gifts or digital and Facebook engagement perspectives. So I thought we'd start, as we talked about the other day when we were prepping for this, talking about the Facebook lens. It's something that we talked a lot about in this conference, and there are a lot of assumptions about it. The principal one being that if you do a Facebook fundraiser or if you're the beneficiary of one, pretty much you're out of luck. You don't know who your donors are. So maybe we can address that right away and talk just briefly about whether or not we can reimagine how Facebook is used, maybe other social networks as well, from a relationship fundraising perspective, and then move on to the major gifts element of that. So do you want to take the first crack at that, Mark?
Yeah, I'll step in and take the bullet on behalf of Facebook because my guess is that this is a panel and filled with attendees who have a lot of thoughts and feelings they would like to share with Facebook about how Facebook giving tools were built and operate. So I'll be the first one to step in and say, I've worked with and been a part of nonprofits for over 5 years now, and I get why there's so much animosity. So to provide some context to kind of how we got to this point, I'll share some information that we at Good United have learned from Facebook, which is when they created Facebook giving tools, they had two user groups in mind, which were fundraisers and donors. So there's a big group missing from that. I'll give you a hint. It's what we're all a part of right here, right? Which is nonprofits. So they did not consider the needs of the nonprofit when building this. In that context, a lot of your animosity and questions might now make sense, which are, why don't I get the data of everyone who donates? Why can't I, why do you ask the questions in this way? Why does the information from the transaction report display the way that it does? And the reason being is when they created that, they didn't go to a nonprofit and say, what would you like to see from this tool? Again, to kind of step in front of the bullet and try to imagine it from Facebook's perspective, the reason that they did that is because they're attacking nonprofit giving and changing the world through nonprofits from a different angle. We're on the nonprofit side. So nonprofits have years of experience in buying software, owning the data, and especially the process. You know, when you give online, when you give through the mail, what questions do we ask? What form does that take? Where do we keep the data? What do we do with the data? Well, you obviously don't own Facebook. You could ask Mark Zuckerberg to make some changes to that. Good luck. Probably not going to have much influence over the process. And data is a very sensitive topic for anybody who understands Facebook and has seen them in the news the last few years. I'm probably not going out on a limb. I don't want to speak on their behalf, but I don't think anybody would call me crazy to say, chances are you're going to get less data directly from them than you have in the past. It's not going the other way. They're not going to flip a switch and give you all the information that you want to get from people. And the reason that they did that is because they're trying to drive an experience from the user. So whereas we bought software and designed it the way that we wanted and went out and found the people, they found the people. And then made it as easy as possible for them. So that's where the disconnect lies. So don't want to start too early and bursting bubbles in this great conference, but if you came here expecting to hear great news, next month you're going to get every email address from every person who made a donation on Facebook. Allow yourself to imagine that that is not going to happen. So, but the other thing to consider or to understand as a part of this, which is something we all talked about yesterday again in preparation for this, which is, you know who doesn't care that you get all of the data are the people on Facebook who are supporting you, right? So just because we don't like Facebook and we don't want it to be set up in the way that it is, and trust me, Good United works closely with Facebook and makes a lot of suggestions, hopefully some that are heard, probably the majority of which won't be followed. We want to advocate on behalf of nonprofits. I know there are a lot of nonprofits that have contacts at Facebook and work with them. Know that all of those discussions, and just because there are things about it that we don't love, people are still going to be using it. So the growth on Facebook and Facebook giving tools prior to COVID-19 was exponential. Took 3 years to raise the first $1 billion, a year to raise the second billion, and then 5 months to raise the third. So a hockey stick of exponential growth through Facebook. And what that means when we start kind of kicking off this topic and this conversation about one-to-one relationships is my first plea would be, don't view this as adversarial. View it as an opportunity, as a point of engagement. Barbara and I were chatting yesterday, and one of the things I mentioned is I'm been around in this long enough, and as many of us have, to remember things like, the Benavon model. And the first step in that is, when you get that gift, and the next part of that is a cultivation aspect of it. And so many times when we talk to organizations about Facebook and how are you viewing Facebook and Facebook giving tools, there's this air of, well, it's transactional. You know, people make donations, but we don't really get the data, so we don't do anything with it. We know what to do with direct mail. We know what to do with email. We're going to put our resources and our time and our effort into those channels that we're familiar with. And where that's missing from kind of the theme to carry through from our last conversation is that this is merely a point of entry where someone is spending time.
So let me if you don't mind, then let me pivot over to Barbara on this, because you've kind of set up the challenges with this, and I know you have a very specific solution that you've been working on, but the reality of where we are before we get to where we need to be is the one that I know, Barbara, you have a lot of experience with. There are people, as Mark just said, organizations are raising now billion in a 5-month period. That's obviously much faster than when Facebook fundraisers started. We see them every day. Everybody's trying to raise money on their birthday. But for the organizations that want to build relationships and run a major gifts program, how are you advising them to deal with that reality right now, as you've described yourself as a non-tech person, which I think is a little not exactly fair to yourself, but how are you advising people to take care of this in this reality where we are right now?
Right, and it is funny because I'm not on Facebook at all. I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, but I'm not a Facebook user. But what when I have heard, to Mark's point, as he started in his remarks, that sort of pain and frustration from the nonprofits saying, well, we raised all this money, but we can't access the data. And so I always encourage nonprofits to think about what's that donor experience that they want to create. The donor experience is going to have a lot of different touch points. It isn't always a one-on-one relationship, although it might lead to that at some point. But what is that experience that this new, probably a new donor or existing donor has with that organization? And is it positive in all the different ways that it exists so that that donor wants to stick around? So looking at something like a social platform, whether it's Facebook fundraising, whether it's Insta donating, or or some other way of communicating and on the social networks, that's their preferred way of communicating right now. So it is up to the nonprofits to be listening, doing that social listening, and understanding where are those donors engaging, how are they engaging, what's on their mind, what do they like, what do they don't like, and see if they can curate that conversation where those donors already are, and then bring it offline or bring it into a different realm through direct mail, through online, their website, through maybe one-on-one, or upgrading to mid-level giving or major donor level at some point. But it's always about, are we creating the right easy points of entry, Mark, to your point, the Benevon model? That's probably a first-time gift for many Facebook donors. Are we connecting with them in a way that they feel valued, that all the principles we do offline, do they feel valued? Do they feel like they know what the mission of the organization is? Do they feel like they are going to make a difference? And let's bring that as a starting point, because they happen to use that method as their donation platform of choice in that moment.
Barbara, before we go back and focus on Facebook for a minute more to figure out how to really operationalize some of these challenges, you mentioned that you're not a Facebook user, but you're using LinkedIn, you're using Twitter, obviously, and we know that probably each of us and everybody who's sitting in is using one or more of these platforms. When you think about these platforms in their totality, what do you think is the opportunity as we exit this? So let's just imagine we could get all the email addresses we wanted, right, Mark? But let's just imagine that for a moment. But what is it we should be doing once we do that? I mean, if people have decided to gather around in Facebook to have a conversation with family and maybe some colleagues, or on a page, or with some other group they've devised, an alumni club, whatever it is, that's one thing. Another discussion is going on in the groups on LinkedIn, right? Or we're posting there for other purposes. Then we've got the stuff going on Twitter, and those are just three. There are over 300 the last time I looked of any kind of size. So when you think about this more broadly, how do you help them make that link? Where do we need to be looking next if we get the right tools to find these people?
It's about how you're telling your story about your organization. So what is it that, and whether it doesn't matter the platform, but are you talking about your mission? Are you bringing those stories of impact? Are you profiling beneficiaries? Are you giving calls to action so that whatever platform they're seeing your organization on, they might feel inspired to be doing something? Right now, in this moment in time, donors are looking to help. And Clay had mentioned in his session, his and Ryan's session, about not being afraid to ask and don't assume for your donors. That's absolutely 1,000% true, because in a Fidelity study that was just released last week, they asked nonprofits, they asked donors, and they asked nonprofits, about how they felt, what were their worries or what were their perceptions of it, and about 90% of them felt like they were going to lose revenue. But when they asked the donors, 50 to 75% of them said they were likely going to give the same, or if not more, than in 2019. So right now, with everybody forced onto these digital platforms, you got to double down on how you're telling your story, how you're asking people to be part of your solution. So it might be doing virtual events, it might be doing face-to-face, so doing Facebook fundraisers, it might be volunteering in some way, raising their hands on those virtual platforms. You got to figure out, though, how to weave in your message around mission and impact, so that those donors, wherever they're seeing you, even if they're non-donors, they see it and they make that connection. That's something I need to, that's something that is living and breathing and will have an impact on our community long after we return to normal.
And Mark, and turning back to you, but I know this is a question maybe both of you can address. One of the challenges with all this is, I guess, making a decision about whether we're trying to serve people in our environment or their chosen environment.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we're doing both. I mean, you were making an argument, Barbara, for a multi-channel approach, but that can obviously then serve them in our environment or in their environment, or both. Mark, do you have some thoughts on practical approaches you're taking, just kind of, like very razor sharp 2 or 3 things that would help us to serve people in their environment or our environment, especially if we don't know who they are, without literally clicking on all the icons of their faces and trying to friend them, which is perilous and maybe not well advised? What do you recommend, Mark?
Yeah, I think I do have 2 or 3 tips, but I want to kind of draw a parallel to what Barbara is mentioning and bring it all together in that donor life cycle, which is first ask the question, this is a layup, Barbara. Do you think major givers are on Facebook right now?
Of course.
Are they giving and supporting causes that they care about that today they don't give a major gift towards?
Yep.
That's an easy question, right? If we understand that as the level set here, right? We're here. I'm really glad this is the last topic, because I feel like bringing a lot of this stuff together, which is about that one-to-one relationships, speaking with people and connecting with them, connecting what you do in changing the world, and how they can be a part of that. To your point, Jane, wherever they spend time. We're in a position right now with what's happening where people are moving to social media. Barbara, you mentioned you're not on Facebook. Weirdly, I had not been on Facebook before I started with Good United for 7 years. I started a Facebook account because I thought, we work with Facebook, maybe I should be on Facebook. And now with COVID-19, I'm actively posting and responding to. Facebook is telling us the same thing. Their statistics on usage are way up. People are coming back to Facebook. And for the first time now, we're not getting those questions of, hey, Mark, do you guys think that Facebook is a place where young people spend time? Or I've heard moms are now on Facebook, or grandmas are now on Facebook. Is it transitioning? Are younger people using something else? We're actually at a really interesting point where every generation across America is using Facebook. The number and the usage statistics are going up, but the demographics of who are using it is expanding rapidly as well. So with that in mind, if we know that more people are today getting on Facebook, and Barbara, to your point, and again, hopefully everybody realizes, these people that care about your causes are on Facebook, and they're making donations and they're starting fundraisers. Jay, the first tactical way to get in front of this, rather than saying like, I don't know where to begin, or I'm just going to put this to the side and focus on things that, I do understand, is, again, one more contextual piece is that the bar on this is very, very low. I don't know how many of you have ever started a Facebook fundraiser or made a donation, but very, very, very few of us ever receive anything from a nonprofit. Usually the receipt comes from Facebook. There are some organizations who try really hard to get a social media team to just post a thank you message. And that's a good first step. Is like, one thing we've heard from a lot of people in this moment is that we don't want to let staff go, but frankly, there are staff who don't have things to do. We had an entire events team, and their jobs and roles and responsibilities are not there. We have to repurpose this person, these 5 people, this team of 10 people. They have to do something right now because we want to keep them on staff. If you're in a position that you're fortunate enough to be there, or you're on your organization's Facebook page at night, if you're a smaller organization, take that first step, click on your notifications, look at your fundraisers, say thank you. That is step 1. Make it just one very low bar to clear. As you want to lean into this and say, hey, these people are out there and they're supporting us, or have the potential to support us in other or larger ways, you can begin the process of trying to somehow collect that information. And we've seen some really interesting and creative ways on how to do that. In fact, that's how Good United as a company was born. One of our co-founders, Nick Black, who started Stop Soldier Suicide, hated the fact that he couldn't say thank you to all these people at scale. And that's kind of where our service was born out of, is to solve for some of these challenges. But going nonprofit to nonprofit, we've seen some really creative solutions. So it could be we post a thank you, and that's just a link to our website along with that thank you message. So it's one more place that they can go and explore. Other people are sending them to a survey form. It's like, we'd love to keep you in touch about where your donations or where your support is going. And they fill out a form. Good United obviously is a technology solution that can really help this and does help this at a massive scale. But understand that the majority of people right now and organizations that are out there maybe have 1 to 10 Facebook fundraisers every month, collectively maybe 50 donations. Again, that's a low bar to clear. So if you're not at the point where you want to make a technology investment to start to tackle these challenges, take the beginning steps of reaching out to them and saying thank you. And we've heard some really cool stories from small organizations who have said, like, I talked to a founder just the other day who said, I'm personally messaging people who make donations on Facebook through my own Facebook Messenger. Point of note, that's against Facebook's terms of service. So baby, be careful about that. But it's such a small scale for them. It was, 10 to 20 donors, and she was just saying this. And the messages that she was getting back were these really heartfelt stories of, this is how we're connected with your mission. And one in particular led to someone who was a major donor for a competing foundation in the same mission area of focus. They actually thought they were making a donation to the other organization. And this was a touch point for her to connect and say, I'm glad you're a part of this. Did you know what we do? Sorry for the mix up, but do you know we do all of these other great things as well? So when we think about when Barbara teaches all the great tools and ways to maintain those relationships over this period for those mid-level and major givers, and I'll let Barbara expound on that and how to continue to do that. But understand that these people are also out there on Facebook. So if you meet them on Facebook, Barbara, I'd love to have you expound on why omni-channel over maybe what we as organizations may have as our preferred method of communication.
And I think that this is, unfortunately, I think this may have to be the last word, but please, Barbara, take your time, because this is so important as a way to wrap these ideas, and for that matter, the last 2 days together.
Sure. So a couple points. We are in such a hyper-connected 21st century world where all of us are on so many different platforms and in so many different mediums. So our nonprofit communication strategy has to mirror that. We have to meet our donors where they are. So to the point we were starting this session on about, really fine-tuning our communications and our donor connections through Facebook, it's because they're there. They're on that platform for however many hours per day. So why not use it as a way to try to start a dialogue? So I would say that we know that any one channel in isolation is not nearly as effective in terms of saturation, in terms of effectiveness for open rates and read rates and so forth, than it is for multi-channel. So direct mail by itself is still important, but when it's combined with an email and some sort of web promotion, it lifts it by 30% in terms of open rates. So because then that person receives something, they might put it down, they get a reminder, they might get something on one of their social feeds, and they say, "Oh, right, I got something about that. Yeah, that reminds me, I've got to make a gift, write a check, make it online, whatever their preferred is." So that just connects it, and it offers different ways for those donors to receive the information that we want them to hear about our organization. But the other piece, and Mark, you said it so well about the first step is just saying thank you. Penelope Burke, in all of her research, has said one of the basic things that donors want is prompt and meaningful gift acknowledgement. So why aren't we able to do that in all the different ways that donors are able to give to us? That's a really easy way. So if they're able to just post something on that Facebook page saying thank you to all of our donors, and hope maybe that those donors will be able to see it if they don't have that email info. But the other piece is that it's about really understanding what are the drivers for those donors. So they may choose to give because somebody a friend of theirs or a colleague had a Facebook fundraiser. Are they giving because the person asked them, or are they giving because that organization actually meant something to them? That's the thing that we face all the time in anything, right? Whether it's a run or a sponsored walk or whatever, or it's a gala, some sort of event-based fundraising. It's understanding, okay, who are the real donors who are interested in sticking around with us. And that requires that social listening, that requires those surveys to understand a little bit more about what prompted them to make that gift. And also, frankly, if they do take that survey, that's a signal right there that they want to continue that conversation with you as an organization. So I think it's taking all of these digital platforms and trying to put it back into the context of how we build relationships face-to-face with each other, right? You pick up the phone and call a new colleague that you've met or a new friend that you've met. You don't go right into, let's go for dinner, right? It's baby steps. You might meet for coffee. You might have a video chat. You might send them a link to something that you saw because you learned a little bit about them. All of those principles about strong relationship building can be applied to our donor relationships in all these different platforms.
That's a great summary. Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Jay.
I know we're, quarter of, so Taylor, I'm surprised you haven't pulled out the hook. But this is a great way to kind of summarize a lot of what at least I've been hearing the last couple
Well, if I'm being honest, I was allowing you guys to just summarize the day for us.
We're done.
We're done. I think, all right, so Jen, Julia, we're all back.
We're back.
Hello. Thank you, Barbara and Mark. I think it was interesting to pair the two of you together. I know that at first you were maybe like, these topics don't go together, but they do, because everything's about that human-to-human, relationship building, and it's just happening in different ways these days. And it will continue to happen in different ways these days, and we have to understand the full spectrum of relationships and humans and that human-to-human marketing, which is something that we brought up yesterday.